Winter arrived that year without ceremony, as if the land itself had grown tired of announcing hardship. Snow settled early along the fence rails and rooftops, dulling the world into a quiet palette of white and ash. The town lay hushed beneath it, chimneys breathing thin lines of smoke, windows glowing warm but distant. Along the frozen road, 3 small figures moved in careful rhythm, their steps matched as if guided by one shared thought. The identical girls walked close together, shoulders brushing, gloved hands hidden inside sleeves far too thin for December. Their breath rose and fell in unison, pale clouds dissolving into the cold air before they could linger. Mei Lin, Xiaoying, and Lan Hua had learned early that sameness could be a kind of shelter. Matching braids, matching steps, matching silence. At 9 years old, they understood hunger not as an emergency, but as a companion that never strayed far. Their stomachs ached with a dull patience, the kind that no longer demanded tears. Each girl carried the same thought, unspoken yet shared: there would be no Christmas dinner this year. Not unless something unseen shifted in the world. Behind them, their mother followed at a slower pace, careful not to crowd them, careful not to let her weariness spill forward. Lin Huashan kept her eyes lowered against the wind, one hand pressed to the worn shawl at her throat. The fabric had once belonged to her husband, before the earth closed over him and left her with 3 children and a silence that never quite lifted. She counted her steps instead of her worries, because counting worries led nowhere useful. The coins in her pocket had already been counted, smoothed, and counted again until their number felt like an insult. Still she walked, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant admitting what waited at home. The butcher's window glowed bright with red cuts laid neatly on ice. A small pine branch hung above the door, its needles shedding quietly onto the step. The girls slowed there without realizing it, noses tingling at the smell drifting through the cracks. Lin Huashan rested a hand on each small shoulder, gentle but firm, guiding them onward. Looking too long made want louder. Want was dangerous. Want led to hope, and hope was a luxury she could not afford her daughters. At the general store, Walter Briggs stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, jaw set in its usual line of irritation. Lin Huashan waited her turn, posture straight despite the ache in her bones. When she finally spoke, her voice carried no tremor, only the simple request for flour and a little dried meat, paid later, after mending work came through. Briggs did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His refusal landed heavy precisely because it was calm. He spoke of rules, of accounts overdue, of charity already stretched thin. His eyes flicked once toward the girls, then away, as if sameness made them easier to dismiss. Lin Huashan nodded, thanked him, and turned before the silence could deepen. Outside, the cold cut sharper. The girls said nothing as they followed her, but Lan Hua reached for her mother's sleeve, fingers tightening briefly, a question asked without words. Lin Huashan squeezed back once, the promise of protection offered though she did not yet know how to keep it. They returned to their rented room above the laundry by late afternoon. The space smelled faintly of soap and damp wood. Lin Huashan lit the small stove and set a pot to warm water, movements practiced, efficient. From a cupboard, she retrieved the last steamed bun wrapped carefully in cloth. It was smaller than she remembered. She divided it with steady hands, for pieces made as equal as care could manage. The girls accepted their portions with solemn gratitude, chewing slowly, as if slowing time itself might help. Lin Huashan waited until they finished before turning away, swallowing the part she did not take. Night crept in early, pressing close to the windows. Somewhere in town, laughter spilled from a saloon, bright and careless. Lin Huashan pulled the girls near and began brushing their hair, braid after braid, smoothing flyaways, anchoring them for sleep. She told them quietly that tomorrow would come, that winter did not last forever, that even the longest cold learned to move on. She did not say how, because she did not know. Across town, unseen by them, a man reined his horse near the hitching post, snow dusting his coat. Elijah Boone had come in for supplies, nothing more, his list short and practical. As he turned toward the butcher's shop, his gaze caught on 3 small shapes near the road, already fading into the dark. He watched them go, an unfamiliar weight settling behind his ribs, and for the first time in years, the quiet of winter did not feel empty. Morning loosened the town's grip on silence, though the cold refused to soften. Snow creaked beneath boots, and the sky held the color of old tin, promising nothing generous. Elijah Boone finished his errands early, flour and nails tied behind the saddle, his movements unhurried as if time bent differently around him. He had always lived that way, steady and spare, a man who wasted neither words nor steps. Yet as he turned his horse toward the road leading home, the memory of 3 small figures lingering near the butcher's shop rose again, uninvited and persistent. He reined in, breath clouding before him, and looked back toward town. Something in him resisted the pull, a voice shaped by years of solitude reminding him that noticing pain did not require owning it. He had survived by keeping his boundaries clean. Still, the image refused to fade. Identical heads bowed against the cold, a woman's hand resting protectively at their backs. Hunger, he realized, had a look, and he recognized it because he had worn it once himself, long ago, when his mother taught him how to chew slowly to make food last. Elijah dismounted and led his horse toward the bakery, the warmth inside fogging the windows. He bought a loaf without ceremony, then another, tucking them beneath his coat. The baker offered a cheerful word about Christmas coming soon. Elijah nodded, though the word Christmas carried no shape for him anymore, only a hollow space where memory used to sit. Outside again, he scanned the street, unsure what he expected to find. The road lay mostly empty, save for a young stable boy sweeping snow aside and a woman struggling with a basket near the corner. He spotted them near the laundry building, the triplets waiting while their mother spoke quietly with someone inside. The girls stood close, their sameness almost startling now that he saw them clearly. 3 copies of the same fragile resilience, faces pale but composed, eyes too serious for their age. Elijah hesitated, then crossed the street, boots leaving deep prints behind him. He stopped a careful distance away, aware of how sudden kindness could feel like threat. He did not speak at first. He crouched slightly and set the loaves on the edge of a crate, easing his hands away as if from a skittish animal. The girls watched him with identical stillness, eyes flicking to their mother for permission that did not come. Lin Huashan turned then, surprise sharpening her features. Her posture straightened instantly, a shield raised without thought. She thanked him, her voice polite but firm, and began to refuse before he finished the gesture. Elijah shook his head once, slow and deliberate. No explanation followed. He only nodded toward the bread and stepped back. The silence stretched, not awkward but weighted, as if both understood that dignity mattered here. Lin Huashan studied him, searching for hidden cost, finding none she could name. At last, she accepted, bowing her head briefly, the movement small but profound. The girls reached for the loaves together, fingers brushing, their restraint cracking just enough to reveal wonder. Elijah mounted and left without giving his name. He did not look back, though he felt their gazes settle against his spine. The road out of town felt longer than usual, the familiar landmarks softened by snow. He told himself it had been nothing, an errand delayed, a choice easily forgotten. Yet his chest felt lighter, and that unsettled him more than regret ever had. By late afternoon, the Boone ranch came into view, fences half buried, the barn standing patient against the wind. Elijah tended his horse, split wood, completed tasks that kept hands busy and thoughts orderly. The cabin remained quiet, its single window dim. He ate a simple meal alone, the habit of solitude etched deep. Still, he found himself glancing toward the empty chair across from him, wondering when he had begun measuring space by absence. In town, Lin Huashan divided the bread carefully, her hands trembling only after the pieces were set. The girls ate with reverence, crumbs caught at the corners of their mouths, eyes bright with relief. Gratitude warmed the room briefly, then cooled into worry. Kindness, she knew, could invite questions. Already, whispers trailed her family like snow dust, light but relentless. She had survived by staying small. Being noticed felt dangerous. That evening, as lanterns flickered alive along the street, Walter Briggs passed the laundry window and frowned. He had seen the bread. He had noticed the girl's fuller cheeks. His mouth tightened, calculation replacing indifference. Charity, he believed, disrupted order. He resolved to speak with the preacher, to remind the town how fragile balance could be when lines blurred. Across the miles, Elijah stood at his door, looking out at the darkening fields. He thought of the woman's bowed head, the girl's synchronized reach, the quiet weight of having been seen seeing them. He did not know their names, yet he felt them press gently against his life, asking nothing, changing everything. Somewhere between the cold stars and the sleeping land, he realized the winter had not finished with him, and the choice he had made might only be the beginning. Snow fell lighter now, as though the sky had grown curious about them. Days passed without incident, yet something quietly shifted in the town's cold routine. Lin Huashan continued working wherever hands were needed, washing, mending, scrubbing until her knuckles burned. The triplets walked with her, then waited, patient as stones, sharing looks instead of complaints. Hunger remained, but it no longer stood alone. Memory of bread had joined it, softening its edges without erasing the ache entirely. They carried that small miracle carefully, afraid that thinking too hard might make it disappear again by morning light alone together always. Elijah Boone did not return to town for 2 days, yet his absence did nothing to loosen the thought he had left behind. He worked the ranch with deliberate focus, repairing a broken gate, checking the cattle, counting supplies as though numbers could quiet a restlessness he had not invited. At night, the wind pressed against the cabin, and memory pressed harder. 3 faces, nearly the same, floated behind his eyes, and a woman's bowed head returned whenever silence grew too wide to ignore without effort or defense, left standing watchful inside his chest through sleep and waking hours alike. On the 3rd morning, he saddled his horse before sunrise, decision settled not as resolve, but as acceptance. The ride into town felt different, less like interruption, more like continuation. Snow glittered briefly beneath hooves, then darkened to slush. He bought nothing unnecessary, only what could stretch without calling attention. When he passed the laundry, he saw Lin Huashan hanging cloth despite the cold, fingers red, movements methodical. The girls sat nearby, back straight, watching flakes collect on their skirts with solemn interest and shared attention still binding them together closely through every passing moment now observed by him quietly. He did not approach immediately. Experience had taught him that space mattered, especially to those accustomed to having none. Instead, he finished his errand and waited, leaning against the hitching post, observing without claim. Lin Huashan noticed him eventually, recognition flickering across her features, followed by caution. She straightened, wiped her hands, and gave a measured nod. The girls turned as one, their expressions curious but contained, as though joy required permission now. Elijah stepped forward, keeping distance, and spoke at last, his voice low, offering work, paid fairly, temporary, without obligation, the terms plain as fresh snow between them. Lin Huashan listened without interrupting, weighing each word as if it might tilt her life. Work meant money, money meant food, yet work also meant being seen, and being seen had cost her before. She looked to her daughters, 3 faces waiting, trust unquestioned. Pride rose, then softened into resolve. She accepted with conditions, her voice steady, her back unbent. Elijah nodded once, agreement sealed without flourish. The girls rose together, relief flashing briefly before discipline returned. Nothing about the moment felt romantic, yet everything about it felt safe, and safety settled into Lin's chest like warmth finally allowed inside. The journey to the ranch came 2 days later, their few belongings tied neatly in cloth. Snow fell steadier, thickening the world into quiet. Elijah rode ahead, setting an easy pace, never looking back yet always aware. The girls watched the fields pass, whispering to each other, their voices light. Lin Huashan felt the weight of judgment lift slightly with every mile, though uncertainty remained. When the cabin appeared, small but solid, smoke curling from the chimney, something unfamiliar stirred. Not hope, she told herself, but space to breathe without counting costs or expectations placed upon her without mercy before. Life at the ranch settled into routine, gentle but precise. Lin Huashan worked steadily, cooking, mending, cleaning, never overstepping, never shrinking. Elijah paid as promised, spoke when needed, listened when it mattered. The girls fed chickens, collected eggs, laughed softly when they thought no one heard. Laughter changed the air, startled and tentative, like a bird testing winter. Elijah noticed from a distance, pausing mid-task, something loosening inside him without permission. At night, candles burned longer, and silence felt less severe. Still outside, the town whispered, its judgments gathering like clouds, unseen but certain, waiting for an excuse to break. That excuse came sooner than expected. A visitor rode out from town, bringing news disguised as concern. Mrs. Pike spoke of appearances, of talk, of lines crossed. Lin Huashan listened politely, hands folded, face calm. Inside, old fears stirred, warning her that shelter could be temporary. Elijah stood nearby, silent, his presence steady. When the visitor left, Lin Huashan began packing without drama. Elijah stopped her gently, voice firm. She was not a burden. Work was work. Home meant safety. She met his eyes, something breaking open, though she did not yet know how much it might cost them both. Christmas approached quietly, the calendar turning without ceremony. Elijah prepared a simple meal on Christmas Eve, stew simmering slow, bread warming. They ate together, for small bowls and one large, the girls wide-eyed, Lin Huashan careful with gratitude. Afterward, she stood alone by the sink, tears falling silently, ashamed of relief. Elijah said nothing. Later, he placed an extra blanket over the girls, tucked corners carefully, and left the light burning. Lin Huashan watched from the doorway, realizing kindness did not always announce itself. Sometimes it waited, steady, asking nothing, changing everything slowly, without permission from fear or doubt first. Outside, the storm began, snow thickening, wind rising. Elijah stood at the window, watching darkness gather. In town, Walter Briggs counted accounts, jaw tight, deciding that order must be restored. Lin Huashan lay awake, listening to the wind, wondering if safety could last once noticed. The girls slept, hands linked, dreaming of warmth. Between storm and judgment, between kindness and custom, the ranch held its breath, and with it every fragile hope they had not yet named, waiting to see who would stand when winter finally pressed hard enough to demand an answer from them all without mercy or delay. The storm arrived before dawn, unannounced but absolute, as if the sky had chosen to answer every unspoken worry at once. Snow thickened into sheets, wind clawed at the cabin walls, and the ranch disappeared into a white silence that erased distance and direction alike. Elijah rose early, pulling on his coat with practiced calm, though unease tugged at him. Storms demanded preparation, and preparation demanded leaving safety, if only briefly. He stepped outside, breath stolen by cold, scanning fences and cattle lines, measuring risk against necessity with the steady mind that had carried him through worse winters alone. Inside, Lin Huashan woke to the sound of the door closing and the wind rushing to fill its place. She lay still for a moment, listening to the girls' breathing, three rhythms braided together beneath quilts. Fear crept in softly, uninvited, reminding her how often absence had turned permanent in her life. She pushed it aside and rose quietly, lighting the stove, setting water to warm, anchoring herself in motion. When the girls stirred, she smiled easily, though her eyes lingered on the door longer than needed. By mid-morning the storm had grown teeth. Snow hammered the windows, and daylight dimmed to a bruised gray. Lin Huashan kept the girls busy with small tasks, shelling beans, folding cloth, lessons whispered and repeated. Mei Lin began to cough, then Xiaoying, then Lan Hua, their chests tight, brows drawn. Lin Huashan felt panic flare sharp and immediate. She wrapped them closer, pressed warmed cloths to small foreheads, counted breaths with them until fear loosened its grip just enough to think. She told herself Elijah would return. She told herself storms passed. She told herself many things she needed to believe. Elijah rode hard through white blindness, snow stinging his face, horse laboring beneath him. He reached the nearest neighbor's fence, found it broken, fixed what he could with numb fingers, then turned back, urgency pulling him faster. Halfway home, he spotted a shape along the road, dark against the white. Walter Briggs's horse stood riderless, reins tangled. Briggs himself lay nearby, stunned but alive, pride shaken more than bone. Elijah dismounted, helped him up without comment, set him on the horse, pointed him toward shelter. Briggs muttered thanks, eyes narrowed, humiliation burning hotter than gratitude. Elijah watched him go, knowing the man would not forget the debt. When Elijah finally returned, snow clung thick to his coat, beard rimed with ice. Lin Huashan met him at the door, relief breaking through restraint despite herself. He took in the room at a glance, the girls' flushed faces, the tension pulled tight. She told him quietly, voice steady but eyes dark with fear. He did not hesitate. He packed supplies, wrapped himself again, and left before she could protest, riding toward town through a storm that seemed determined to test him. Hours stretched thin. Lin Huashan sat between the girls, singing softly in her native tongue, songs her mother had sung when fear felt endless. The girls listened, hands linked, comforted by sound even as coughing shook them. Outside, the storm raged, and time lost shape. When the door finally opened again, Elijah staggered inside, snow melting into puddles at his feet. He set medicine on the table, exhaustion etched deep, and met Lin Huashan's gaze without words. Together they dosed the girls, waited, watched, breathed again as fever eased and breathing steadied. Night fell heavy and close. Elijah sat apart, warming his hands, eyes distant. Lin Huashan finished tending the girls and turned to him, gratitude swelling until it pressed against her chest. She thanked him simply, without flourish. He nodded, discomfort flickering, and used to praise. Silence settled, thick but not empty. Outside, the storm began to relent, wind losing its fury, snow drifting softer now. In town, Walter Briggs lay awake, pride smarting, resentment sharpening. He remembered the bread, the work, the ride, the way Elijah Boone had stood firm without spectacle. Order, he decided, had been disrupted long enough. He would speak. He would remind the town where lines belonged. By morning, judgment would travel faster than snowmelt. Lin Huashan stood by the window, watching the storm ease, unease returning as calm followed danger. She understood storms passed, but consequences lingered. Elijah joined her, gaze following hers into the dark. He spoke quietly then, not reassurance but truth. Whatever came, he would not send them away. The words settled between them, fragile and fierce. Outside, the night listened, and somewhere beyond the snow, the town prepared to answer kindness with scrutiny, setting the stage for a reckoning none of them could yet see clearly, but all would soon be forced to face. Christmas morning arrived without bells, the world hushed beneath a clean, unbroken layer of snow. The storm had passed in the night, leaving behind a stillness so complete it felt deliberate, as though winter itself had paused to watch what would happen next. Pale light slipped through the cabin window, touching the rough table, the stitched curtains, the quiet shapes beneath blankets. The triplets woke together, blinking in surprise, their coughs gone, their breathing easy. For a moment they lay still, listening, unsure if safety remained once daylight returned. Lin Huashan rose before them, moving carefully, reverently, as if noise might undo what the night had given back. She stoked the stove, laid bread to warm, unwrapped small parcels Elijah had set aside without comment. The scent of stew filled the room, richer than anything she had known for years. She felt gratitude swell again, sharper now, edged with fear. Gratitude, she had learned, often asked for payment later. She smoothed her hair, straightened her dress, and prepared herself for whatever the day might demand. Elijah stood outside, splitting wood beneath a sky washed clean. His movements were steady, familiar, grounding him as voices approached along the road. He heard them before he saw them, boots crunching, words carried thin through cold air. He set the axe aside and waited. When the townspeople emerged from the trees, faces tight with purpose, he did not step back. Walter Briggs rode at their center, pride mended poorly, resentment polished bright. Behind him walked Mrs. Pike, the preacher, and others who believed order required enforcement. They spoke of propriety, of appearances, of charity misplaced. Their words piled carefully, like snowdrifts built to block passage. Elijah listened without interruption, hands loose at his sides. When they finished, he answered simply. The woman worked. The children were safe. No rule had been broken. His calm unsettled them more than anger would have. Walter Briggs pushed forward then, accusing, reminding, demanding restoration of balance. Elijah met his gaze and spoke of the storm, the road, the horse, the help given without conditions. Silence followed, heavy and cold. Inside, Lin Huashan heard voices rise and fall, felt dread coil tight. She gathered the girls close, fingers threading through their braids, grounding herself in touch. Mei Lin pressed her face into her mother's side. Xiaoying held her hand. Lan Hua watched the door with solemn resolve. Lin Huashan inhaled once, deeply, and made her choice. She would not hide. She stepped outside, the cold biting her cheeks, her spine straight despite the tremor beneath. The townspeople turned as one. Lin Huashan bowed her head briefly, then lifted it again. She spoke quietly, voice clear, thanking Elijah for work honestly done, payment fairly given, shelter offered freely. She spoke of her daughters, of illness, of storms survived. She did not beg. She did not apologize. The girls joined her then, standing shoulder to shoulder, identical faces lifted, eyes steady. Their sameness no longer small, but formidable in its unity. A hush fell. The preacher shifted, shame flickering across his features. Mrs. Pike lowered her eyes. Walter Briggs scoffed, but the sound rang hollow. Elijah felt something settle finally into place. He stepped forward, placing himself beside them, not in front. He spoke of home, not ownership, of choice, not obligation. He offered partnership, respect, time. The words were plain, but they landed with force. The balance Walter Briggs prized tilted, then tipped. Snow crunched as neighbors stepped closer, curiosity softening into recognition. Someone brought a basket, another a scarf. The town, confronted with courage instead of compliance, began to shift. Walter Briggs saw control slipping and turned away, his retreat sharp, final. The threat dissolved, not with triumph, but with quiet resolve. Elijah exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. Lin Huashan felt warmth spread through her chest, unfamiliar and fragile, yet real. Inside again, the cabin glowed. The meal was shared slowly, reverently. The girls laughed openly now, voices ringing clear, joy unrestrained. Elijah watched them, carving small wooden gifts he had prepared in secret, animals and stars smoothed by careful hands. The girls accepted them with wonder, clutching them close. Lin Huashan watched, tears finally allowed to fall, grief and gratitude mingling without shame. Later, as dusk gathered, Elijah stood beside Lin Huashan at the window. Snow reflected the fading light, turning the world silver. He spoke then, not of forever, but of staying, of seasons yet to come, of building something steady together if she wished it. She met his gaze, seeing not rescue, but respect. She nodded once, slow and certain. Outside, the girls built a small snow figure, their laughter carrying into the dark. Night settled gently. The cabin held warmth, not just of fire, but of belonging newly claimed. Lin Huashan tucked the girls into bed, listening as they whispered dreams shaped by safety. Elijah banked the fire, set the door, and paused, taking in the quiet he no longer feared. Winter pressed close outside, but inside, something had changed shape entirely. This was how love arrived, she realized later, not loud, not demanding, but steady as snowfall, transforming everything it touched. And as the night deepened, the future waited just beyond the window, uncharted, promising, asking only that they step into it together, unafraid at last.